Hello, I'm going to talk about what is a design storm. And a design storm is a storm event that's used for the design of hydraulic structures. Presumably, the structure will function properly if it can accommodate the design event at full capacity, and a risk of failure is allowed. So what you have to do is, depending on where you live or where you're going to practice, you'll need to look at what are the regulations and what are the design storms that you use for the specific hydraulic structures. We'll see that in a little bit. So let's bring some definitions to the table. The average recurrence interval, or just recurrence, can be called as well. So what you have is, if it's a 1,000-year average recurrence interval, that means that this is a storm that can happen every 1,000 years, or the probability that that specific storm occurs in a specific year, in one given year, is 1 in 1,000, okay, or 0.1%. If we have a 100-year storm, that means that it's a storm that will happen 1 every 100 years, or the probability that it occurs in a specific year is 1 in 100, or 1%. And so if you need time to look at these values, you can pause the video. So the average recurrence interval, or return period, that's another word for it, is, for example, here we have a 100-year 24-hour rainfall volume. So you look at the depth of that rainfall event, of that design storm. So this is a storm event that has a duration of 24 hours and that it occurs every 100 years, or that it's got a probability of occurring in one specific year of 1%. So another way to describe it, 24-hour rainfall depth, because then you look at the depth, that won't be exceeded but more than once every 100 years, or that it has a 1% chance. So either definition. So what we're looking is, among other things, but for now, is the depth of that storm. Remember that sometimes we refer to the depth of a storm or the volume of a storm as depth, because it's over an area, and that makes it a volume. So the two things, as you can see, is the average recurrence interval and the duration. So here we have a 100-year 24-hour rainfall event, and this gives you, there's isothermal maps, and gives you a spatial distribution all over the United States. So now remember that we had looked before at the average rainfall all over the United States. Now we're looking at probabilities. So 100-year 24-hour rainfall gives me the depth of the storm that has a duration of 24 hours and that has a probability of occurring 1 every 100 years, or 1%. So as you can see here, I mean, here's El Paso, and it's kind of general. It's not very specific, right? So you cannot look in detail at what is the exact value in El Paso. It's about 4 inches, but if you want something more precise, you need to look at other more detailed maps. This is taken, this TP40, which was done in 1961, has every possible storm that you can imagine, 100-year 24-hour, 100-year 1 hour, 100-year, all of that. So it has it in spatial distribution and also as tables. There's different sources to find that TP. 40, the U.S. Weather Bureau, it's technical paper 40, that's why it's TP40. And you can find them following these links. It's all the same information, it's just that different people have published it, so you can take a look at that. Other sources I have put here. You can find depth, duration, frequency of precipitation for Texas, but again, it's the same information, just presented differently. FEMA, also has some maps, and specifically here we have for El Paso County, so it has a little more detail. And then here you have El Paso Airport. So again, you can find this in either tables or figures, and we'll see that in a moment. But here we have the return frequency, or the average recurrence interval, of 1. So the return probability is 1/1. And then this is the duration: 1 hour, 2 hours, 3, 4, 6, so on and so forth. So I can have a 10-year, 1-hour storm would produce a depth of 1.15 inches. So a 10-year, 1-hour storm is a storm that has a duration of 1 hour and that occurs 1 every 10 years, or that has a probability of occurring in one specific year equal to 0.1. Okay, that's a good source of information. There's 2 manuals from the City of El Paso that you must download. There's the City of El Paso Drainage Design Manual, and then there's the Design Standards for Construction. So those 2 are the ones you're going to be using. So if you move to another city, they should have similar manuals. Now, what happens with the Drainage Design Manual is that if you download it directly from the City of El Paso, for some reason the whole manual is not downloading, so it's going to be incomplete. But I have downloaded the complete manual in Blackboard, so you will have access to that. Okay, so this is taken from the manual for the City of El Paso, the drainage manual. And what's good is that then it divides the depth of the different storm events between the west side, the central, and the east side of El Paso. So it's a little more specific. So for example, here you see for the west side region, which would be here, you have the return frequency. So it's a 1 year, 1 hour storm. The depth is 0.43 inches. And so you can find here for a duration of a storm that goes from 1 hour to 24 hours, and then from 1 year to 500 years. We'll look at the intensity equations in a moment, but for now I want you to focus on that depth, and that is found in the drainage manual. So whenever you do this and have the storm selection, what happens is that the drainage manual also gives you, and also the construction manual, what are the design storms that you need for the design. So it's specific, it's given. So the design storm depends on the importance of the structure, the cost, the level of protection, and the consequences of its failure. So what happens is that if there's human lives at stake, if that hydraulic structure fails, what you will see is that then you will have a storm that has a longer average return interval or recurrence. So it's not going to be a 10-year-old, it might be a 100-year, not 10-year-old, 10-year storm, or versus a 100-year storm. Okay, all of that you can find in the drainage manual and the construction standards. I wanted to point out that when it comes to highways, TxDOT has specific regulations and specifications on the design storm that are different, so you need to look at that. So just as an example, in the City of El Paso for park ponds, you design them to retain the runoff of a 24-hour 10% annual exceedance storm, or 100-year 24-hour duration storm. Okay, so it would be 100-year 24-hour storm. So that's the design storm. So what I want you to do now is, if I'm asking you that a reservoir is going to be designed that from a 10-year 24-hour rainfall event in El Paso near the airport, what rainfall volume in inches is to be considered. So you can pause this video or not and find that rainfall volume from the El Paso Drainage Manual.